So, the matter at hand. It's funny, I picked this topic a few weeks ago before I knew Hurricane Helene was hitting, and just with all the events of the week, it just reminds us all we are so interconnected, right? I mean, the decisions we make about how we live, how we consume, affect people all over the globe. And we've got, so many connections. I know there are people here who have been affected themselves with damage to their homes. We have a lot of people in our sangha who live in the Asheville area, most of whom don't have any power. We've been in connection with most of them. They seem to be okay, but it's a disaster up there. And, so many people here in the Tampa Bay area and beyond who've lost home, had damage. We have friends and family that we're worried about. We see with this destruction, this interconnection of all of us that's there. So, when we have a natural disaster like this, it's an opportunity, I think, for all of us to just pause and say, wow, life is impermanent. There's causes and conditions making all of this happen. How am I spending my life? Am I really preoccupied with all my stuff, or, am I open and looking outward with others? For those of you online, we were very fortunate at the center here to really stay out of harm's way. We had a lot of bamboo on the ground, and it was a lovely practice the last few days to clean that up, but again, so many others weren't. So how do we live our lives? Again, this makes us stop and just kind of re-examine what's important. The Dalai Lama was talking at one point about death, and he said, when we reach that destination, and he's talking about death, money, fame, power, weapons, and if you've ever seen him on a video, you know how he talks, no use, very emphatically. He said, what will bring us tranquility in that moment? Life spent meaningfully serving others, not harming others. At that moment, we can feel very happy. And so I think in these moments of natural disasters, we kind of naturally move in that direction a bit. Our hearts open up. We feel the suffering of other people. We want to help people. Most of us look for ways to help, to reach out and help people, which we do individually. We've done as a sangha in the past. But other times, we kind of pull back in again. We lose that connection. We feel separate. So Buddhism, fortunately, gives us some really beautiful practices for reopening the heart. And I want to talk about that today. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Brian was here, sitting on the stage, and talked about, he asked us, if I recall correctly, to see how we feel when we are focusing on ourselves, what you called self-cherishing. When it's all about me and getting what I want and getting what I need, my happiness, my not suffering. He asked us to experience how that feels. And I think essentially it was, people felt like, you feel kind of constricted. It's not satisfying because it doesn't last. So many times we're just focused on getting pleasure or some success, some kind of gain, but that doesn't produce lasting real happiness. And then he asked us to focus on, well, how do we feel when we're helping others? And, it's an entirely different feeling from self-cherishing, feeling very much, focused on me, this closed, tight, protect me, aggrandize me feeling, to all of a sudden, when I care about Nikki or Brian or Salima, that self starts to melt away. That skin of self that we're so wrapped up in starts to fall away, and our heart just opens to someone else. And it's a feeling that's wonderful. It feels connected because we are connected. It's sort of our natural state. So, Brian gave us a really nice taste a couple of weeks ago of, just experiencing for yourself, not because it's the right thing to do, to not cherish self and cherish others, but because that's truly what makes us happy. It really does. Try it for yourself, I think he said, and we can do that and experience that. So that's great. So why don't we do it all the time? Because why don't we do it all the time? Let me ask you. Why don't we? Why do we move back into self-cherishing? Anybody, just call it out. Why do you move back into self-preoccupation? How does that happen? Fear. Yeah, there's, pardon? It's a pattern, yeah. We're just used to doing it. We've done it so many times, right? The brain even supports that pattern. Yeah. Cultural norms such as? Right. Me first, instant gratification. And yeah, think about all the advertisements. They're so oriented toward making a better me, right? Yeah. So we don't blame ourselves for this. I mean, it's what most people do, but we realize, wow, Buddhism tells us this is not what will make us happy. We don't have the capacity to become happy by winding up in this one. Happiness comes from opening up to others. So there's so many practices for opening the heart. How do we push back? How do we change and make that shift from that societal, cultural norm to that pattern, that fear? How do we kind of break through that and open up to other people and have that happiness? Because it sounds logical, right? Who wouldn't want to really experience true happiness? So there are so many practices. We have a document on the website for FCM called Meditations for Cultivating Loving Kindness and Compassion that I think Brian and I put together after a retreat years ago. And it's in, I think, the resources section. And we have lots of different meditations and reflections and things you can do. In fact, at Full Moon Loving Kindness, which we'll have in a few weeks, we do it every month, we do a lot of those practices. But sometimes I think what happens is, in Buddhism, you hear about loving kindness and compassion, and so may all beings be happy, may all beings not suffer. We say these words, but sometimes we miss the preliminary step, which is so important, and that is opening the heart to all beings without discrimination. Not seeing our interconnection and not seeing that everybody, whether we like them, don't ever think about them, that everybody wants to be happy. So 2 practices I wanted to focus on today that a lot of you know. I know it. We've taught them a lot, but I need to do it more and more, and I think we all do. So 2 practices that can really help shift that are seeing our interconnection with all beings, and specifically we'll do that with a gratitude practice, and then seeing deeply that everyone else is just like me in wanting to be happy and not suffer. And we do practices with these too because, I saw some heads nodding as I said it. And yeah, if it's intellectually we get it, of course, everybody wants to be happy and not suffer. But we don't live our lives that way all the time. We don't really see that. So we do these practices that many wise teachers in Buddhism have given us over thousands of years, so that we really do the work of opening the heart, not just let it stay here. We actually reflect deeply. We chew on this, and then we practice it out in the world. So that's what we'll talk about. So again, the 2 areas are seeing our interconnection and then seeing that everybody wants to be happy and not suffer. So if we start with seeing our interconnection, again, we're not, as Allison just said, we're not really supported in our culture to see that interconnection oftentimes. We're kind of lone cowboys. We think we're self-reliant. We think that we did so many things ourselves. Oftentimes we don't really realize everything we do in our life is not possible without the support of so many other people. So it's good to stop and see that interconnection. So let's begin with just a short gratitude meditation where we want to just recognize the incredible kindness that we've gotten from so many people in our lives. So I invite you to close your eyes. That's comfortable for you. And, be sitting in a way that you're comfortable and relaxed. And take a moment to just notice what's your current state of mind. What's the current tone in your mind? What's your mood? Is it peaceful, agitated, open, not so open? Without judgment, just noticing how you're feeling right now. And now let's take a brief inventory of circumstances that you have in your life, things that you can be grateful for. So let's begin by feeling gratitude for the people and the circumstances that led you to this moment right now, to being here today. People who support you being able to be here at sangha today. Perhaps people at home. Perhaps the fact that you have work that allows the leisure to come and practice. Maybe someone's watching your children. That someone also services our car, maintains the roads. Lots of people really, when we think about it, who support our being here today. And for those of us that were impacted by the hurricane, maybe gratitude, or even those who weren't, just gratitude for all the people that were there for us and for other people before the hurricane came. The grocers who were working right up to the storm coming.
Minutes, and we are going to start our moments off without our Bible today, guys. We're going to go ahead and move into
Gratitude to Lee, who's going to take care of the noise coming out of the speaker. We couldn't do it without her. That's all fine. Gratitude for laughter. You know, the reporters, the weather service, we actually have a sangha brother in the room with us today who's one of those people that flies the airplanes into the storm to let us know what's happening, to be safe, to track. The rescue workers, people who may have given us shelter, who helped us in the aftermath. Or even if we're not affected, just being grateful for the safety and security that we do have in our lives. And so many other people in this world of climate change, there's so many more natural disasters occurring, so many people suffering. Just being grateful for the safety and security that we do have. So just grateful for so many people who've played a role just this past week in supporting so many other people. And as we do reflections like this, whenever you can bring to mind maybe somebody specific, maybe a particular cashier at your grocery store, you know, you can feel gratitude to groups of people, but you can also bring to mind an individual and really feel gratitude to one person. And now considering your gratitude for the people in your life. So offering your gratitude to your immediate family members and your extended family. All the ways that they've supported you in the past. Even all just the little things that people do for us. Feeling appreciation for your coworkers and your friends. Maybe there were mentors who've helped you in your life, teachers, other beings who've helped you grow into the person that you are today. Just taking a moment to feel gratitude for these mentors, these benefactors who've helped us. And offering gratitude for the many people who just on a daily basis support us in our lives. You know, people who provide food, waste collection, healthcare, transportation, who support the technologies we rely on. Just noticing, how much gratitude and appreciation we have for all these people that we're so reliant on, so connected with. And considering your gratitude for this planet Earth, for the water that we have to drink, which as of now, quite a few people in the Southeast don't have right now. For food, that this planet enables us to grow, the air that we breathe. So many beings and this wonderful planet that support us. Seeing yourself as part of this web of life, not separate. Just taking a few moments to just notice how you feel when you stop and notice and appreciate this interconnection with all these beings that help us in so many ways. Just notice, how does my heart feel? When I stop, appreciate, feel gratitude. So when you're ready, just opening your eyes and just inviting just to call out, how do you feel when you do a practice of gratitude? How do you feel right now?
Thankful.
Thankful.
Aware.
Aware. Yeah.
Relaxed.
Relaxed. Open. I'm sorry? Open wide. Open wide. Yeah, thank you. At ease. Yeah. I mean, we all know how to practice gratitude. This is nothing new for you, I know, but we need to practice. I mean, this is when we get like this. It's kind of like when we stretch at yoga or in Qigong, we need to stretch out. We need to stretch that heart. We need to open it. We need to see that connection. The Dalai Lama called it a circle of caring. So for many people on the planet, the circle of caring that they have is pretty narrow. It's like a belt. The circle of caring is about me sometimes. And the Dalai Lama is encouraging us that we all want to have this circle of caring have no boundaries at all. Now that's a big jump. There may be some people you're like, most people, but not that one, into my circle of caring. But it's a practice, right? We see this interconnection, and there's lots of practices for extending that circle of caring, but we do it by deliberately reflecting like this. And so, one way to look at it is, and I think, Brian, you may have talked about this a couple of weeks ago too, is, the body, we call this a body, but it's a lot of different parts. There's this and this and this, there's all kinds of things here that we call the body. And if this, gets hurt, without thinking, this will reach over and, try to take care of it, to soothe it. So the body works to heal itself. It doesn't say, no, I'm not the left hand, I'm not gonna help there. So similarly to the body, which we do appreciate, we want our bodies to be healthy and happy, we can begin to look at a wider body of humanity. So close your eyes again for a moment and just imagine that wherever you are, for those of us here, maybe you're floating above your city or town, and those online, wherever you happen to be living, you're just you've levitated up, and you can see all of Tampa or St. Petersburg or Naples or Atlanta or Asheville or wherever you happen to be. You see all the beings there, and just notice all the interaction that goes on in that body of your town. People are providing food for each other, medical care, financial services, education. It's just this system that works together to stay healthy and care for each other. And so this is the body of community. And we can include the whole community in our circle of caring. And now imagine yourself levitating even more, so you're up in the atmosphere, almost like an astronaut would be looking down at planet Earth. And you're seeing this beautiful planet from space. You see this beautiful planet as one living, pulsating being. It's made up of so many parts, just like our physical bodies. But you can see that it functions as a whole. And you see that when we don't take care of some part of this body, we take more than we need. We pollute it, we clear cut it, we wage war in it, then the whole planet suffers. So we want to look and see that this whole planet is one body, and begin to expand again our limited notion of me to include all beings, to see the interconnection and interdependence of all beings, not to exclude anyone at all from this circle of care, to see suffering as part of one body. Their suffering is my suffering. How can I help dispel it? So we want to begin to just shift our view much more widely from me to everything being me. So, opening your eyes when you're ready. And again, we deliberately do these practices to see that interconnection, to see one body, and to remind ourselves, because, as you said, it's a pattern. We have habits of living and looking at things a certain way. We only change by creating a new cause for looking differently at the world and doing it over and over again. So we do these practices. And so now that we have our eyes open more widely to the people that we're connected with, the other step, and there's a lot of ways to do this, but we want to look at all these connected beings and see that just like me, they want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. And, oftentimes we don't see that because we don't, as somebody else said, we're not aware. We're not paying attention to other people. Or we may judge them. We don't like the way they choose to be happy. We have a lot of, sort of me and ego tied up in that. So we can practice just dropping all of that judgment and seeing, just like me, they want to be happy. So first we can look at happiness. Just like me, everybody else wants to be happy. And a way that I often find amusing to look at that is Fred and I oftentimes go for walks on Riverwalk on Sunday evenings. And there are so many different people on Riverwalk doing all kinds of things for fun or to be happy. Some people are walking together, some people are rollerblading, some people are skateboarding on bicycles, running. Some people are handing out religious pamphlets. Some people are locked in romantic embraces. Some people are playing loud music, playing games. There's families. Some people are eating. There's just people doing a lot of different things. Because presumably to be happy. And so that's all fine and good. It just shows us all beings want to be happy. So close your eyes for a moment, once again, and we want to reflect so we feel the truth. We want to feel it in our hearts that, yeah, all people really do want to be happy. So think about people in your family. Or it could be people in your workplace or friends and acquaintances, but people that you know that are somewhat close to you, and think for a few minutes about all the different ways they pursue happiness. And even those who do it in a way you don't think is healthy, just for the moment, acknowledging that, they may be doing it for some temporary pleasure that they think will bring them relief, but just think about how different they are and what this one does and what that one does in trying to be happy. And now also think about your own wish to be happy. We all want to be happy. Really feel that yourself, how strong that wish is, however that manifests for you, but that you have this desire to be happy. And that all these people in your life that you may have brought to mind, they just have the same desire. They're just like me. They want to be happy. And can you feel that? We're all alike in that. And my happiness is no more important or less important than theirs, but just acknowledging for all beings, they want to be happy. And now drop that reflection for a moment and let's just reflect on suffering. So let's start off by just imagining there's 10 people in a hospital. They each have a different disease. They're all suffering from different illnesses. But no matter what their form of illness is, they all want to be free from their suffering. They're all alike in wanting to be free from their suffering. And now again, think about people that you know who suffer psychologically. Some people, some friends or family members may be lonely. Some may have lost people they love. They may have lost relationships that have ended. Some may be sad. And not all the time, but they may experience sadness, resentment, anger. We don't have to judge their suffering, but just recognize that people in your life, they do suffer in all kinds of different ways. And they may try different things to relieve that suffering, but at the base, they don't want to suffer. We're all alike. Think of how you don't want to suffer, and you know they don't want to suffer either. So opening your eyes again when you're ready. And we're going to do a practice. You know, sometimes I think we have the most difficult time with this with neutral people. You know, we just don't really notice them or pay attention. But in doing some of these practices, where again, we're trying to expand this circle of care, you know, to care about the happiness and suffering of other people. Because when we care, if it's possible to help alleviate that, then we'll act. But just that fact, that truth of caring, of opening the heart, is what begins the process of really reaching out. And even if we can't do anything, you know, having a caring, compassionate heart for ourselves is helpful for us and helpful for the world. And sometimes there are people that, as I mentioned before, we don't want to let into this circle because we don't think they deserve it. And we're not going to go there today, although Buddhism has some really good practices for that too. And maybe we'll do that when I'm next back in November. But this practice of just walking around life and seeing other human beings as just like me, it doesn't matter if we've ever met the person, if we'll ever see them again, if we're walking by them in an airport, in the grocery store, suddenly this one-dimensional looking person comes to life when we realize that, yeah, just like me, that guy, he wants to be happy and not suffer too. And so I have just found with me, it's a slow process over time, but doing this practice of looking at people that way and really saying in my mind has really helped open the heart. And it really changes how you relate to the world in a much more beautiful way. Suddenly, life has a lot more meaning. It's much richer. So last practice that I'd like to do kind of in that regard today is called Just Like Me. And then we'll take a few questions after that and we'll talk about it a bit. So to me, this is a practice for tenderizing the heart. So what I invite you to do here in the hall, to just take a moment and look around the room and in your own mind, hold the face of someone that you don't know well. So you don't really have a strong feeling for this person. And those online, please look at the faces of other people on the screen, which is why it's good for videos to be on if you can. And then just hold in your mind the face of one of these beings, and we're going to practice with this person. So taking a moment now to just close your eyes, relax for a moment, and then just picture this person like they're sitting right in front of you. So you've got their face in mind. You're looking into their eyes. You can actually do this practice looking into someone's actual eyes, but I think for today, this is a little probably more helpful way to do it. But you're imagining looking at this other person and just reflect. This person has a body and a mind just like me. So really just seeing this other being as a body and mind just like me. And this person has feelings, emotions, and thoughts just like me. Sometimes the person's joyful, happy, excited, grateful. Sometimes they're anxious, fearful, angry, resentful, maybe jealous, sad. All those emotions, feelings, the types of thoughts I have, this other person has those too. We're alike. And having a mind that produces these mind states, these thoughts. This person, in fact, has at some point in his or her life been sad, disappointed, angry, hurt, or confused, just like me. And just imagining this person going through times like that, feeling these emotions, just like me. It's going on in each of us. This person has in his or her life experienced physical and emotional pain and suffering, just like me. Yeah, they suffer too. They've experienced pain. And although this person may have different unpleasant situations or sufferings that he or she wants to be free from, you are both alike in wanting to avoid suffering. You know, one person may suffer from losing a job, someone else from a breakup in a relationship, someone else from being lonely, someone else from poor health. But no matter what the suffering is, we are alike, the two of us, in wanting to be free from suffering. And this person wishes to be healthy and loved, to have fulfilling relationships, just like me. This person wishes to be happy, just like me. And there's no reason that my happiness or wish to avoid suffering is any more or less important than this person's. We're the same. So even though I invited you to select someone you don't know, perhaps you feel right now like you actually do know them at a very deep level. You know what's most important. You know they want to be happy and free from suffering. Isn't that important to know? And we can do this practice often with all kinds of people. We can do it on a very short basis. We can do a longer reflection. Let's take a moment and just now let go of this person's image in your mind and just imagine someone that you don't know, but someone who may have been in the path of the hurricane and who at this time may be suffering. They may be fearful or anxious about their present situation, worried about the future. So just take a moment and maybe you bring to mind a kind of a faceless person, or you bring to mind a whole community or all people that were affected, and just imagining the suffering that they may be experiencing and wishing them to be free from that suffering. feeling their desire to be happy and wanting them to be happy, and seeing that they're no different than us. None of us want to suffer. All of us want to be happy. So this practice is called equalization. And again, there are other types of practices that are really helpful for, again, opening the heart and including people. But this one, I like it because you can do it anywhere and nobody knows you're doing it. So standing in line at the grocery store, someone's in front of you or several people are in front of you, you're waiting in line, and, just remind yourself, these people have all kinds of things that happen in their lives. They have challenges, they have suffering, and just like me, they want to be happy and they want to be free from their suffering. And it can transform the moment from impatience to opening. So it's just a really wonderful practice. So I'd like us to talk about this in groups, but first let me just stop and ask questions, or maybe what you experienced during some of these meditations, anything that's come up that you want to share, anything that's not clear. Please just raise your hand and Brent will take you the microphone. And anybody online who would like to share, please chat it in and Lee will share that with us. What do you experience when you do these practices? And anything surprise you? Anything not clear? When you brought to mind the face of somebody in the room or online, when you first brought them to mind, maybe how did that feel? And how did you feel at the conclusion of the practice? Had anything shifted for you? Maria Teresa?
I notice that when I do this practice, it's interesting that there's always, sometimes someone will come to mind that I don't I haven't thought. They just arise, like you said. And then I do feel a deeper understanding and connection to them. Mm-hmm. And that helps me kind of understand myself better too. So it's always amazing that that we're so interconnected with so many people we don't know, and they just may come to mind. And I just allow that to be there and bring that person forward. And it just makes the world a little smaller in a way, like, mm-hmm. more people. So yeah, thank you for bringing this practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy, welcome back.
I love these practices. But I'm curious what you think, if it's possible to have a heart that's too open. There's so much suffering. You mentioned, the recent climate crisis, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of all the war-torn areas and the famine and the disease, and sometimes my heart is so open that it's a bit overwhelming. What would you recommend for those of us who suffer from that?
Yeah, I know you have a big heart, but it's step by step. Yeah, we don't want to overwhelm ourselves. There is a lot of suffering in the world, and Fred often tells us this is a developmental path. So we start off with, he's often said, let this hand care for this hand, at the very most basic level, and then, perhaps we reach out for people that we're close to. But over time, there is really no boundary to what our heart can hold. And I've mentioned this oftentimes at talks, and I'm sure you and others are probably familiar with it too, but there was the famous study done at Emory, and they were tracing the brainwaves of the monk who's been attendant to the Dalai Lama for so many years, Metu Ricard. And it was a study on really suffering, empathy, and compassion. And they showed him pictures of people, mostly children, in really very difficult situations that really would have torn open a lot of people's hearts. And most people that they did the study with, when they looked at it, it activated, they were actually doing an MRI, it actually activated a part of the brain that connected with suffering and pain. And people were overwhelmed by it. But when they were doing it with Ricard, it activated a part of the brain connected more with happiness and joy. And he was fine. And they said, "What are you doing?" A little suspicious as to what he was doing in the study. And he said, "Well, when I see this, my heart just opens and I want to help." And that's a whole other Dharma talk. But compassion in Buddhism is not just empathy for suffering. I'm so glad you asked that question, because empathy means I feel your suffering. If we stop there, we can be overwhelmed. Compassion means I see your suffering and I want to do something to alleviate your suffering. And what Ricard, even though he couldn't actually do anything in that particular case, the fact that his heart wanted to help, that he had that open heart that reaches out with compassion, actually kept him from being overwhelmed. And they said, "Well, stop it. We're going to run the experiment again, and we want you to stop thinking that, and we want to see what happens." So he left off the wanting to help and just tried to focus on feeling the pain, and he was overwhelmed. And the charts went back to how everybody else's chart looked like. So, I think the Buddhist practices we do on compassion help us, again, step by step. We don't just immediately go out and just say, bring on all the pain of the world, because most of us would be overwhelmed. But we learn with compassion to understand why suffering occurs and to want to alleviate, to really love people, and to want to alleviate that suffering. So I'd practice that way. Does that help? Thank you. Others? Hi, Rob.
Hi. Yeah, sorry, not to nitpick, but I think there was an important piece missing there, that he not just imagined, I heard that too, but he didn't just imagine wanting to help them, but he imagined them getting better, basically. And that was the important piece. He imagined it transforming. And then that was what was causing and when they told him to stop doing that, then he was just as miserable as everyone else. So, yeah, but anyway.
Yeah, no, thank you. I don't want to get into the practice of Tonglen, which is really what he was doing. That's another Dharma talk too. But yeah, oftentimes just that I think the Dalai Lama said in that same article that, just sometimes our presence, is what we can offer. Maybe there's not something specific we can do. And again, these are practices that kind of get into then once the heart is open, how do we practice loving kindness and compassion? So we'll come back to those in future talks, but at this point we're just looking at how do I open the heart? How do I begin to see other people, not as cartoon characters, but as real people like me, who are just like me and wanting to be happy and not suffer? Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Lee.
So we have a lot of questions. The first question is, in many religion traditions, people believe prayer can change suffering and bring healing. The belief that God will bring healing. In Buddhism, how does meditation change the suffering? Is there a higher power, so to speak? And is it just we transform our own suffering and we are example?
Yeah, so in Buddhism, we're not really looking to a higher power. We are looking at transforming our own hearts and opening our own hearts so that we can go into the world and be of help to others. But knowing that it all starts here, and that, sometimes in life we get caught up in doing, and that can be very stressful because we have an outcome we're trying to reach. We have an expectation that we're going to control the result. And that creates stress in and of itself. So we start inside in Buddhism, cultivating that wish that all beings be happy, we don't necessarily believe, at least in the tradition we practice here, that our aspiration itself without action will change something. But it's kind of gray, because when we transform our own hearts and our being changes, just our presence can be a benefit to other people. But also when we transform our hearts, then we have a way of being in the world that's different. I mean, can you imagine if everyone did this practice in the world? If everyone saw all beings as wanting to be happy and not suffer, it would dramatically change how we interact. So it's an inner practice first, which then translates into an outer practice that helps change the world. So,
Thank you. Another question. So sometimes my desire to end my suffering is so strong, I get it confused with aversion. How are they different?
was it sometimes my wish to end my own suffering, did you say?
My desire to end my suffering.
Yeah. Well, it's natural. We all don't want to suffer. Buddhism brings in understanding. You know, there are causes for my suffering. And so the aversion that gets felt through wanting to end my suffering, I think that aversion tends to soften and really dissolve when we bring in, there are a lot of other Buddhist teachings, but on causes and conditions. We have to work to understand the causes of our suffering as part of relieving it in Buddhism. And with that understanding comes patience, comes acceptance, comes love. And so the aversion really, you know, aversion is there because it's resistance to something the way it is. We don't understand why something is. We know we just don't want it, right? But when we understand what's causing the suffering, then the aversion again tends to melt away. And hopefully we can do something about it to change it. So, yeah. There's more teachings that would be helpful on that, but yeah. Anything else, Lee?
So Bruce said that I surprised myself by finding doubt when you said everyone wants to be loved. So I often encounter and have needed to separate from people who readily become self-protective, employ distancing technique, and most of all deploy the phrase "I don't care" when confronting with a situation that challenges their own sense of place and connection. I practice then, but I confused by such people.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we have people, you think everybody wants to be happy, and we think people would want to be open and be loved, but then people push us away and they do things that we think, wow, this is only creating their suffering. Yeah, a lot of people have wounds from childhood. It's not that there's something bad about them, but something's happened usually. If somebody's closed off like that, they're fearful for a reason. You know, perhaps when they were young, you know, they were hurt, they were abused, they were neglected. You know, we don't know what's happened to people in the past. We don't know what their causes and conditions are that have made them fearful, protective, the way they are today. Yeah, people are oftentimes, when they're not open, they're protecting something. You know, there's something they don't understand. So I think, again, we can be compassionate in situations like that without trying to force ourselves on anyone, just understanding that this person has causes and conditions that make them suffer, and they're not free of it right now. And, you know, in some situations we have the opportunity to help people, but a lot of times we may not have that opportunity. But just understanding that there's really, I love the way Richard Schwartz says, there's no bad parts. Even for people who do things that seem awful, there are causes and conditions that have caused this person's to just contract, be fearful, and live in the way they live, and perhaps inflict a lot of suffering. And that's a journey, you know, of healing and transformation for that person that they may or may not be able to take in this lifetime. But not to take it personally, because it's usually not about us. You know, it's about the person and their suffering and how it's manifesting. So let's stop there for the moment. What I'd like to do is just have people be in groups. So we're going to get in groups of 4, and Lee will put people online in groups. And the invitation is to just each person take 2 or 3 minutes to just share with the others in your group sort of what comes up for you with these practices. You know, kind of looking at your own circle of care. Yeah, just sort of share what's in your heart right now. And the practice for the others in the group is simply deep listening. So when we're listening to the person share, we don't need to think about what we're going to say. We don't respond to them. We just listen deeply at what's being said, perhaps what's beneath what's being said. And Maria Teresa will invite a bell after 3 minutes to switch, and the second person will share, and we'll continue around the group. So why don't we go ahead in the room and just get into groups of 4? And online, Lee, Lee will put you into groups online, okay? We can have some larger groups if we need them. Marilyn, over here. Okay, we're waiting for a couple of people to settle. Okay. All right, please begin. So thank you, everyone in the hall. And Lee, if you'd let me know when everyone's back online. And while we're waiting for everyone online to rejoin, just, thanking everyone for your practice of deep listening and deep sharing, because I think in today's polarized world where we often don't listen to each other, this is a beautiful practice that we do here that we can take into our lives to really just hear what someone else has to say without trying to fix it, change it, judge it, compare it. Lee, are we all back online?
10 more seconds.
10 more seconds. Good. Good. We need to breathe for 10 seconds anyway.
Yes, we are good.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was just reflecting a bit while everyone was engaged, again, on this point that I think Bruce online brought up about, but some people don't seem to want to be happy or don't want to be open. In this very simple practice of all beings want to be happy and not suffer, we really want to, again, remember that everybody has a different idea of what that means. And the practice is not about judging it, and it's also not about condoning something somebody may be doing that causes suffering for other people. But just to take an example, there could be someone who's very abrasive, very belittling to other people, and you may think, I don't see this person trying not to suffer or being happy. How could this person even be in my circle of care? And again, a different talk, but we go back and realize every one of us has grown up in a different household where it's been stressed, this is what you need to be like to be worthy and to be loved. And so some people grew up in households where, I know in my household it was, don't cry, you just suck it up and do it, which can make you kind of cold and, sort of not so warm sometimes. Other people were told you got to win at all costs to be good enough, and they wanted their parents' love. Other people were just, afraid of being abused, so they realized they had to close off and protect themselves against other people. So as we do this practice, we really want to bring in that understanding that people are doing their best. It's like take an old laptop and you just load any old software on it. Sometimes the software doesn't work and sometimes it does work, but we're like that in a way. Buddhism's very logical. We are a product of our causes and conditions. And so what has been, and fortunately Buddhism teaches us a way to change those causes and conditions, but most people don't have those teachings. So most human beings are walking around kind of programmed by their past, and a lot of people are on autopilot, and they're just reacting the best way they know how, given what they've learned to deal with life. They're doing the best they can given what they've learned. And when we really can understand that, we can open our hearts to all kinds of people. And it doesn't mean people don't have to be stopped, sometimes even incarcerated. But it means we do it from a place of love, not from anger and judgment. We do it from a place of understanding. But we start with these practices like today by just really seeing, in our own weird ways, sometimes we all want to be happy and not suffer, and so does everyone else. And so when we can start there, we'll find that our compassion and our loving kindness just much more naturally flows. So thank you all for your attention and your practice this morning. I realize we were opening and closing those eyes quite a bit, but hopefully you had a few moments that were helpful, so thank you.